Hi, welcome back to Hobby Hotline. I am Dan.
This is not Hobby Hotline.
That is unbelievable.
What a
Welcome back
Freudian
to
slip.
Hobby Think Tank. This is what happens when you do too many shows. But I am joined by Mike Moynihan. I am Danny Black, embarrassingly yellow at this point. But we are redefining the greatest players today on Hobby Think Tank. How are you, Michael?
I'm good. I'm excited about this episode. When you and I were kind of spitballing this idea, I talked to several other friends, and I'm like, am I thinking about this wrong? Because I have a way that I'm going to present of maybe how we need to rethink the greatest players of all time. You are going to come up, or you've come up with a way to define the greatest players, and I think they're good complements to each other. It's not that I'm taking one side, you're taking the other. And what's really cool, towards the end, we'll get to some players that just really surprised us positively and negatively. Like, wow, I thought this guy would have been higher, or wow, I'm surprised this guy's up there.
Well, when you first called me, you had a very specific kind of system you wanted to use. Do you want to explain yours first, and then I'll go into mine?
Yeah. So WAR, wins above replacement, is a stat that I have struggled over my years of fandom as it's become more and more prominent to really grasp and understand. And it's because I think there's some things with it when you think about career WAR and all of that make me think, I get it for in a season, right? WAR is wins above replacement, which simply put means how many wins did your team statistically achieve because you were in the lineup versus an average player. And that's a big deal in any given season, right? It tells you your value to your team, essentially, and which was in all that matters, which is wins. How many times or how many more times were you able to win? So if a player has a WAR of 1, they would have one more win they got one more win that season because that player was in their lineup versus the average player in the league that season.
And just for some context, all-star players are roughly a 3-level WAR, give or take.
Yeah.
Just for some context. And that's a cumulative stat that adds up over the career, which is a key point.
Yeah, it adds up over the season, and then that adds up over their careers. And what we find is players that, had great careers, but their WARs may not be that high on their career level because of a myriad of reasons. It could be anything from service in the war, missing time for that. There's all kinds of reasons. And so, as long as, let me take a step back before we get too far into WAR, because I think defining the greatest players of all time has always been an amazing challenge, incredibly subjective, very difficult, different eras. How do you compare players that played in the early 1900s to players from today? There's just so many issues with it that you can poke holes in just about anybody's top 10 if their reasoning is based on just, I just think Babe Ruth is the greatest, or I think Mickey Mantle's the greatest, or whatever, because none of us ever saw these guys play. So the eye test is a difficult thing to bring into it. I've seen Mike Trout play, but I don't know if I saw Mike Trout play and I saw Mickey Mantle play, who would I think is better? I don't,
Well, the professional scouts don't get it right, so the fans don't have a chance.
Right. Yeah, totally. So it is a difficult thing that we've done over the decades of being baseball fans and sports writers and everybody coming up with these lists of top 10, top 100, top 5, whatever. And I wanted it to be a little more objective. And so I started looking at WAR and I started thinking about WAR. I was just playing around, and this is what baseball guys do. I just start playing around on Baseball Reference and I pull up career WAR.
No, we're leaving pitchers out for the sake of this conversation, correct?
Yes, this is position players only, and for guys like Ruth or Otani, which those are pretty much the only two guys, I looked at their position WAR only.
Yep.
What they did when they were playing in the field, not pitching. So, because I thought that was important. Like, Walter Johnson, Christy Mathewson, all those guys needed to be eliminated. I just wanted to look at position players. And what I took was, I said, okay, what's their career WAR? Does that necessarily tell you who the greatest player is just based on career WAR?
No, because that becomes a counting stat like RBIs. The more you play, the more it's going to add up, based upon just being there.
Exactly. Now, technically, you can get a negative WAR. So if you're really bad in your latter years,
yes,
playing out the string, you could theoretically make your WAR worse. But by and large, you're correct that WAR is something that's going to be added to, not detracted from. And
as they call a counting stat occasionally.
Yes, absolutely. So that whole idea to me seemed antiquated, maybe. Because not that WAR is not a cool stat to use. And what I really like about it, what I've learned about WAR, it's been one of those statistics that I've been pretty resistant to. But the more I learn about it, the more I think it's a pretty good measure for a player's season or career, because it looks at the average player of that season.
Yes.
And so how much better were they than the average Joe? Now, you could argue that in the 1910s, players weren't as good as they are in the 20s. Say that the average has been raised. That's certainly an argument someone could make.
Absolutely. And WAR is also one of those stats that takes a lot of things into consideration. So we don't have to talk just power or just speed. It allows us to take the best of the ball player and kind of neutralize that against other players' strengths, and then compare over time. And WAR's a little bit, unique in some of the stuff we're going to talk about, but you can do that.
And it uses defense as well.
Yeah.
So you can be a defensive liability and have your WAR affected negatively, or Ozzie Smith and have a crazy WAR just because you were so good defensively. So what I didn't just take career WAR, because that's an easy stat to find. And you can look at that list and probably feel, yeah, wow, these guys were certainly upper echelon top players forever.
But they're going to be guys that typically had long careers.
100% true. And I said, well, does that really tell me who the best player is? And then I thought, what if we took it, because when you pull it up on, and I use Baseball Reference WAR, by the way, there's multiple different people that calculate WAR slightly differently.
Yeah, the two big ones are B WAR and F WAR.
F4, that's right. So anyway, I took it and I divided it by the number of plate appearances, because I thought, man, every time this person came up, what did they contribute to their team? It's hard to compare a guy like Pete Rose, who had 15,000 plus plate appearances, versus someone who might have only had 8,000 or 9,000 plate appearances, which is still a lot.
And actually, that's a perfect example. Hits are a counting tool. Pete Rose got a lot of hits, but he also had a lot of at-bats. His lifetime batting average and on-base percentage is nowhere near other players. So that's a perfect example.
Yeah. So I wanted to equal. How can we equalize this and take the longevity of their career out of the mental equation of who were the greatest players? So it's on a per plate appearance. Basically, to me, that everybody gets an at-bat, a plate appearance, actually, because walks count, hit by pitches, sacrifice flies, things that don't count as an official at-bat matter in WAR. And so based on plate appearances, per plate appearance, who was the best? So before we do the top 10, I think, Danny, I
took
why don't you talk about it? That's pretty objective.
I wanted to take a little bit of a different approach. I love the OPS plus statistic. OPS is going to be your on base plus slugging. And anytime you see a plus, that's going to be normalized to 100 as league average. So if you have a 200 OPS plus, you are twice the league average hitter. So you can do that over a career, and it's still going to be normalized to 100, but you can get a sense of where players rank. And I did a minimum of 5,000 plate appearances. That was done on purpose. Certain players, Joe Jackson, I think Hack Wilson. There was a couple others that just crossed that threshold. So I used 5,000 plate appearances, and I started in 1895 using only the American and National League players.
Yeah, I mean, I nobody on my list is under 5,000 plate appearances, so
yeah,
that seems like a reasonable career. Like if you've come to the plate 5,000 times, you've been around a while. You're not, right, just a one season, wonder.
And the other thing about OPS Plus, I should say, it normalizes for ballpark factors is the key thing also. So if you played in different ballparks, you'll have some of that neutralized to compare over generations, which I like.
So Todd Helton, a Larry Walker would be less than someone who played in the Polo
Grounds. Exactly. Right. Yeah. In fact, I think the Polo Grounds in Coors Field might be the only two reasons that they had to normalize ballparks.
No doubt.
All
so
right.
You want me to do mine first?
Should we get number one out of the way?
Yeah.
Because I think there's
let's just put this to bed right now. Babe Ruth is the greatest baseball player that has ever lived.
Yes.
And it's not even close. At least on the way I looked at it.
So what's his WAR per plate appearance?
WAR per plate appearance is it's kind of weird because it's all to the decimal places. But less better than this next guy. Like it's significant, and so he's just head and shoulders above everyone else. He had a career WAR of 162.7. He had 10,627 plate appearances. Again, guys, this is just math. I took the career WAR divided by the plate appearances, and he's number one by a lot.
I mean, on my list too, which means there's something good about the stats we're using. He has a lifetime 206 OPS plus. So that means for his entire career, he was twice as good as the league. I mean, that's over the entire career. So everybody talks about his later years, he was out of shape, or his younger years. No. Twice as good as the entire league for his entire career, and significantly ahead of 2 and 3. So I think it's going to get interesting after Babe.
So I'm going to do my top 10 it's not my top 10. That's the funny thing. This isn't, this is no subjectivity of Mike's opinions on any of this. This is just the numbers.
That's not true. All comments go to Mike.
But I do like the 10 that it came up with. And there are some surprises even in the top 10.
Okay.
And it starts with number 10. I'll go backwards. Number 10 all time in WAR per plate appearance, which is WPPR or whatever we want to call it. Mickey Mantle.
I think he's got to be in the top 10 somewhere.
So many people criticize Mantle that, he wasn't as good as Mays, wasn't as good as Aaron. And that's true on their career stats. But not necessarily, and Mays is in the top 10, so he is higher than Mantle.
But Mantle had almost 10,000 plate appearances. I mean, it's not like he had a real short career either. I mean, he
had
even when he was hurt, he was putting up those numbers.
Right, 9,910 plate appearances. He was really he lost so much time in season to knee injuries and whatever, right? So he would have had plenty of more plate appearances in 18 seasons, but he was hurt all the time. And certainly that affected his ability. That's what people.
I mean, that's unreal.
So he's number 10 all time in WAR per plate appearance.
Drum roll.
Keep moving. Number 9, Tris Speaker.
Great call.
Great career WAR, 134. I mean, 0.8. Like he's got a very high career WAR. By the way, the average Hall of Famer is about 70 career WAR. Just so you know. Just so there's not average, but no, that is the average. I think
it varied by his position greatly. Also
true, but it's around 70 is kind of like Hall of Fame status on your career WAR.
Yep.
He was 134.8. So he's number 9. Number 8 is Ty Cobb.
Two nasty guys back to back.
Yeah, but they're 8, 9, and 8.
I know.
Cobb, 8th greatest in terms of WAR per plate appearance. Now, Cobb had a ton of plate appearances, 13,000, over 13,000.
Yep.
Number 7, Lou Gehrig.
Wow, it's okay. So everybody knows Mike and I did not compare our list in advance. So I'm hearing this. This is amazingly accurate compared to.
And again, Gehrig's career cut short by Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, and he had a great career WAR, but he could have kept playing.
I mean, I got to be honest. Was he ever going to get a different disease?
Touche.
All right, that was uncouth. Who's next?
Okay, number 6, and this might surprise some people, is Willie Mays. Most people put Mays 1, 2, 3, 4 somewhere in there. If you were to ask them the greatest players of all time, Mays is 6th in WAR per plate appearance. And remember, this does include defense, so it's not like that's being left out of the equation.
Sandy Koufax said best player he ever saw.
And look, we're talking about the 6th greatest player out of however many players have ever played this game. It's not like Mays isn't one of the greatest players ever.
Yeah, these are all small hall people.
Yeah, this is upper echelon. Number 5 is Ted Williams, who, again, has a much lower career WAR than Mays.
But this is why you have to divide it.
This is why you have to divide it by plate appearances, because when they were in the lineup, did they make an impact? Period. Yep. That is what this is really, and that's ultimately what you want the greatest players to do. Yep. And so Mays played 4 more seasons, had 3,000 more at bats almost. So of course he's going to have a higher career WAR.
Well, that's like Ted Williams. Where would his home runs be if he never, missed time?
4 or 5 seasons to serving in World War II in Korea. So, all right. I need to keep going because you got to do yours as well. And then we'll talk about some surprises that I'm excited about. Number 4 for me, not for me, again. Number 4 is Barry Bonds, who has a higher career WAR than Babe Ruth, position player WAR, but 162.8 for Bonds, 162.7 for Ruth. But Bonds had 2,000 more plate appearances. So his WAR per plate appearance, meaning it took him 2,000 more times at bat to equal the WAR of Ruth. What does that tell you? And this is Barry freaking Bonds.
And I hate to go to a counting number, but it also took him that many more at bats to get to the home runs. But
I like it. Number 3, and this was a shocker for all you haters out there, and I'm one of them. I'm calling myself out on this because my friends, when we talk about greatest players, they put this guy in there, and I'm like, he's not there yet. But I am now been corrected because Mike Trout is the number 3 player in career WAR per plate appearance in the history of baseball. That is crazy cool. Now, he's at this kind of, you've had all this peak of Mike Trout. As he continues to play, will his WAR per plate appearance go down as he is not as productive?
He only has half as many plate appearances as Ty Cobb.
Right. I bet the second half of those plate appearances, let's say equal Ty Cobb, is not going to be as productive as the first half.
Exactly.
So you can say the story isn't over yet for Mike Trout. That would be a true statement. But as of right now, he could quit tomorrow and be third best. And that to me is third best player of all time.
It's good to see a modern person on the list.
It is. Number 2 is Rogers Hornsby. So Hornsby, speaker, there's a lot of guys out there that I think are just so underappreciated in the history of the game. Not by true historians of the game, but by your everyday fan.
Yes.
Most fans don't know who Rogers Hornsby is, or Tris Speaker, or probably even Babe Ruth, but no, everybody knows who Babe Ruth is. But Rogers Hornsby, number 2 all time, and he played 23 years. So he did it really well for a really long time.
And wasn't he a player manager at the end?
He was. So his latter years were significantly fewer at bats because he was kind of a part-time role player.
Yep.
And then, of course, number 1 is Ruth. So do you want the surprises from my list before we do your list, or?
Let me do my list because it is so freaking similar at the top. I'm going to go in the other order. I'm going to start at number 1, Babe Ruth at 206 OPS plus. He did have 10,000 plate appearances, which doesn't matter for OPS plus, but he had a full career. People don't realize he played for like 21 years. Ted Williams, 191, is second. Barry Bonds, third at 182. So there you go, Mike. And Lou Gehrig, 179. And Mike Trout, 175. Excuse me, 176. Rogers Hornsby, 175. So the first 6 were all in your list, correct?
Yes.
Mickey Mantle, 172. I think that was he was early on your list, number 10, right?
10. Yeah, he was 10.
All right, now here's the first one that we have different. My number 8 is Shoeless Joe Jackson at 170 OPS plus, which puts him just in front of Ty Cobb at 168. And rounding out my top 10 is a tie between Jimmy Fox and Mark McGwire.
McGwire.
How's that for a name I wasn't expecting?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'll lead that off on my surprises because I never thought he would be anywhere near the top 10, much less tie for number 10.
Yeah, because McGwire was always thought as a very one-dimensional. He wasn't he didn't have high averages. He was very power focused.
But his lifetime on base percentage was .394, and I did not realize that.
Well, he did walk a lot too, right? Just like any power hitter of that era. So Cobb's on your list. Speaker's not, apparently.
Speaker was not far down. Speaker was number 15.
So Joe Jackson, Shoeless Joe Jackson, is number 12.
Number 8.
Well, no, 12 on mine.
Oh, 12 on yours. Okay.
12 on Ward.
Where's Jimmy Fox? One of my favorite
Jimmy
players
Fox
ever.
is 24th.
See a big difference on that.
Yeah.
And
but it goes to show that finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say Jimmy Fox and Mark McGwire. It's just an interesting combination for me to be tied.
Yeah, and it's like if you kind of combine these together, I think you can come up with a pretty good top 10. And people can argue and bitch and moan. There's no perfect way to do this, but again, I love that WAR is looking at players during their era versus average players of that era, not an average player today or a today player looking at an average player back in the day. It's very, how good were they they can't help when they played, right? So just go, how much better were they than everyone else?
So where was McGwire on your list? Was he anywhere near the top?
He is nowhere near the top.
That's interesting.
I'm looking.
That's very interesting.
Some recent guys. Pujols is number 42.
Okay.
But that sounds great. Pujols is almost half of what Babe Ruth was.
Yeah. I mean, it's not perfect. Hank Aaron's 155 and Manny Ramirez is 154 on OPS plus.
Well, I think Manny's a great player.
That goes to show you Hank Aaron played a long time and had a lot of counting stats. But when you look at OPS plus, that struck me as a surprise.
So big surprises for me, a couple of them. Number 1, Mike Trout being number 3. Number 2, Pete Rose. Should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame? Of course he should, right? I think he's paid his price. And statistically, like, he's a Hall of Fame caliber player, right? If we take character out of it. But he was 65th all time in
other than getting hits, though. The last 10 or 15 years of his career were not great years.
Yeah. And he is a third of what Ruth did per plate appearance.
That sounds about right.
Ruth was 3 times more valuable to his team every time he came to bat. Every time. Multiply that over a career, and it's significant. Is my point. Go ahead.
Well, I was also going to say, I mean, imagine where was Gehrig on your list? I mean, you talk about the Yankees in that lineup. For me, it's 1 and 4. So 2 out of the 4. Yeah, 2 out of the best 4 hitters of all time batted back-to-back in the same lineup.
Yeah, this is crazy.
I mean, that's unreal.
They should call themselves something like Murderers Row or something.
Something catchy, yeah.
Yeah, I think
put a whole team around them, win a World Series.
Yeah.
No, but I mean that when I looked at that and I said, I knew Gehrig was good. I knew Gehrig was an all-time great, but I wasn't sure that he was top 5, top 6, top 7, but top 4. I mean, for me, that blew me away a little bit to think about pitching against that lineup.
Well, let me go through some other surprises, some guys that aren't in the Hall of Fame, because this list is full of Hall of Famers. And for anybody who wants to dog on guys like Larry Walker, he's number 29 all time in WAR per plate appearance. So he mattered when he came to bat. But guys like Lou Whitaker is number 48 all time. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. And most people go, oh, he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Based on how valuable he was to his team, he absolutely does. Like now I'm like, yeah, he should totally get in. Then you've got the biggest surprise for me. You're going to love this.
Okay. Well, okay, go ahead.
Number 32, all time in the history of baseball, WAR per plate appearance, Bobby frickin' Grich.
Baltimore Oriole to start his career.
And played with the Angels and the Blue Jays, maybe, if I remember right.
Maybe at the end, but mostly Baltimore and the Angels.
Bobby Grich. I would have never, if you would have told me 1,000 other players that would be number 32, Bobby Grich wouldn't have been on the
He stayed on the Hall of Fame ballot more than people realize, longer than people realize.
And now you could make a case pretty easily. I mean, he's above Wade Boggs, Jeff Bagwell, Cap Anson, Ricky Henderson, Chipper Jones, Al Kaline,
Ricky Henderson surprised me. Did that surprise you because of his walks and power?
It did. He has a great career WAR, but he came to bat so many times that it just 13,000 plus plate appearances that kind of kills his. Again, he's 37th all time. That's impressive, no doubt. Certainly the greatest leadoff hitter. I was surprised Musial was 19th. That surprised me. Yep, that seems low. Hank Aaron was 17, by the way. 17th.
You see, Musial was 12th on mine, but I told you Hank Aaron was 21st. So,
yeah.
I'll tell you the one that's. Can I give you one of my surprises?
Absolutely.
Roberto Clemente, 125.
So where does that put him?
That puts him under Nelson Cruz.
See,
that puts him tied with Greg Luzinski and Minnie Minoso and Dave Winfield. So
in terms of productivity, he was 27th all time. That's pretty above Frank Robinson, above Johnny Bench.
That's 100 places difference. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, how many? He had a lot more of it. I mean, he did get to 10,000 plate appearances. People forget that.
10,012.
Yastrzemski was lower than I thought. Carl Yastrzemski was lower than Clemente. That one caught me off guard. And the one that was a lot higher than I expected was Hack Wilson. And once again, he was only 38th, but I've always just thought of him for the 190, 191 RBIs, whatever they corrected it to. Yeah. And his numbers for his career hold up as one of the top 40 players ever on OPS Plus.
Yeah. I just think it's cool to, again, just think through how do we define this? There's no perfect way. To me, this is my new way to define greatness. I have really enjoyed this research and going, holy crap, and finding players, and it's been great.
Well, there is a Hall of Fame election, depending on when people watch this. So real quick,
happened by the time.
Well, then, real quick, do you have any strong feelings or no?
Well, it's easy with, I guess, for you guys that don't know, it's the day before. So,
yes,
the Hall of Fame announcement. I don't think anybody gets in. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
I think Helton and Roland come up just short.
Fair enough. I agree with that. And to be honest, I don't think they're Hall of Famers, but I'm a small Hall guy.
Right.
So I'm sure I'll get a lot of comments on that. I don't think they should be. I don't think Harold Baines should be in there, but
sure.
And I'm a Baltimore guy, so.
And he played for the Rangers too, for one season or two. But I appreciate y'all willing to listen to us talk through this. Please, down below, poke holes in what we're saying. This or that, whatever your opinions are, you're certainly entitled to them, just like we are. And we'd love to hear feedback from you guys on what you think about this analysis that Danny and I have done. And I know we had fun with it, right?
Well, absolutely. And feedback's welcome, except if you say Babe Ruth's not number one.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything else is legit. If you say Babe Ruth isn't number one, you're
YouTube will ban. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, this was fun. I mean, we could do 3 hours on this. I mean, we're talking, the top 10 greatest of all time, and we probably have a list of 100 players we could have in the conversation.
For sure.
That's one of the cool things about baseball is we're talking about 100 plus years of the greatest players playing the game we love, and it's cool to break it down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was fun.
Yep. All right. You going to say goodbye?
Yeah. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching, and keep collecting.